People often believe that overthinking is simply a personality trait. They tell themselves they're just careful, analytical, or someone who likes to think things through. But there's a big difference between thoughtful problem solving and getting trapped in endless mental loops that leave you feeling exhausted. Maybe you've replayed a conversation dozens of times, wondering if you said the wrong thing. Perhaps you've delayed making an important decision because you couldn't stop imagining every possible outcome. Or maybe your mind seems busiest at night, just when you're trying to sleep. If any of that sounds familiar, you're far from alone. The surprising part is that your brain isn't doing this because it's broken. In fact, it's doing exactly what it was designed to do. The problem is that a system built to help humans survive thousands of years ago is now reacting to modern challenges in ways that often create more anxiety than protection. Scientists have spent decades studying why some thoughts become impossible to let go of, why uncertainty feels so uncomfortable, and why our brains often mistake thinking for solving. What they've discovered reveals that overthinking isn't simply about having too many thoughts. It's about how your brain processes uncertainty, fear, and control. In this video, we'll uncover why your brain overthinks everything, why trying to think your way out of it usually makes things worse, and most importantly, the science-backed strategies that can help you finally break the cycle and regain control of your mind. Imagine standing at a crossroads with two perfectly reasonable paths in front of you. Instead of choosing one, you spend hours comparing every possible outcome. What if one choice is better than the other? What if you regret your decision? What if there's a third option you haven't considered yet? The longer you think, the more difficult the decision becomes. Eventually, you make no decision at all. This is one of the biggest hidden dangers of overthinking. It doesn't just fill your mind with thoughts, it quietly steals your ability to act. While you're searching for certainty, life keeps moving. Opportunities pass by, conversations go unsaid, and goals remain unfinished because your brain convinces you that one more round of thinking will finally produce the perfect answer. Psychologists refer to this as analysis paralysis. When faced with too many possibilities, the brain becomes overwhelmed instead of more effective. Rather than simplifying the decision, it creates even more scenarios to evaluate. Ironically, the effort to avoid making a mistake often leads to the biggest mistake of all: doing nothing. Overthinking also takes a serious toll on your emotional well-being. Every time you replay an awkward conversation, imagine a future disaster, or question a decision you've already made, your brain reacts as though the problem is happening in real time. Your heart rate may increase, your muscles tense up, and stress hormones begin circulating through your body. Even though you're sitting safely in a chair, your nervous system behaves as if you're facing an immediate threat. This constant mental activity drains your energy. By the end of the day, you may feel exhausted despite doing very little physically. That's because thinking requires energy, and repetitive thinking consumes it without producing meaningful progress. Instead of finding solutions, your brain becomes stuck in a loop that leaves you feeling mentally worn out. Overthinking can also damage your confidence. The more you question every decision, the less you begin to trust your own judgment. Small choices start feeling as important as life-changing ones. You may ask others for reassurance, hoping they'll remove your uncertainty, but the relief usually lasts only a short time before the doubts return. Perhaps the most frustrating part is that overthinking creates the illusion of productivity. Because your mind is constantly busy, it feels like you're working toward a solution. In reality, there's a difference between thinking about a problem and actually solving it. One leads to progress, the other simply keeps your attention trapped in the same cycle. So if overthinking causes so much stress, wastes so much energy, and often prevents action instead of improving it, why does your brain keep doing it? The answer lies deep within the way the human mind has evolved, a survival system that was once incredibly useful, but can now become one of the biggest sources of unnecessary anxiety. That's exactly what we'll uncover next. Most people assume that if they haven't found the answer yet, they simply haven't thought about the problem enough. It sounds logical. After all, careful thinking helps us solve complex problems, plan for the future, and avoid unnecessary mistakes. But there's a point where thinking stops being productive and starts working against you. Think about the last time you had to make a difficult decision. Maybe it was changing jobs, ending a relationship, or even deciding whether to send an important message. At first, weighing the pros and cons probably helped, but after a while, you may have noticed something strange. Instead of becoming clearer, the decision became even more confusing. That's because your brain has limited mental resources. One of those resources is called working memory, which acts like a temporary workspace where you hold and process information. The more possibilities, outcomes, and what if scenarios you try to juggle at once, the more crowded that workspace becomes. Eventually, your brain reaches a point where adding more thoughts doesn't create more clarity, it creates mental overload. This overload often leads to decision fatigue. Every choice you consider requires mental energy, even if you never act on it. As that energy runs low, your ability to think clearly begins to decline. Simple decisions suddenly feel complicated, and instead of moving forward, you keep searching for information that will make the choice feel completely certain. But certainty is something life rarely offers. No amount of thinking can guarantee that you'll make the perfect decision because the future is unpredictable. Yet your brain keeps chasing that impossible goal, believing that just one more hour of analysis will remove every doubt. Researchers make an important distinction between reflection and rumination. Reflection is purposeful. It helps you understand a situation, learn from it, and move toward a solution. Rumination, on the other hand, is repetitive. It keeps circling the same thoughts without producing anything new. Imagine replaying an awkward conversation in your head. The first few minutes might help you understand what happened, but after the 10th replay, you're probably not learning anything new. You're simply reliving the same emotions over and over again. Your brain mistakes repetition for progress, even though nothing is changing. This is why overthinking feels so deceptive. It gives you the sensation that you're working hard to solve a problem, when in reality, you're often strengthening the habit of worrying. Every extra loop teaches your brain that uncertainty deserves more attention, making it even more likely to repeat the cycle the next time you face a challenge. So why would the brain develop a habit that seems so inefficient? The answer is surprisingly simple. Your mind wasn't designed to make you happy, it was designed to keep you alive. And once you understand that, overthinking begins to make a lot more sense. At first glance, overthinking seems like a flaw in the human mind, but when you look at it through the lens of evolution, it starts to make perfect sense. Your brain isn't trying to make life difficult, it's trying to protect you. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors lived in environments where missing a real danger could have deadly consequences. Someone who noticed signs of a predator, questioned unfamiliar situations, or anticipated potential risks was more likely to survive than someone who ignored them. Over countless generations, the human brain became exceptionally good at looking for problems before they happened. That survival system is still active today. The difference is that most of the threats we face are no longer life or death situations. Instead of worrying about wild animals or hostile environments, we worry about job interviews, finances, relationships, social rejection, or whether we made a bad impression during a conversation. To your brain, however, uncertainty is uncertainty. It reacts to many modern challenges as if they're serious threats that require immediate attention. This is where something known as the negativity bias comes into play. Our brains naturally pay more attention to negative information than positive information. A single criticism can stay with you for days, while several compliments may quickly fade into the background. That's because your brain treats potential problems as more urgent than pleasant experiences. From a survival perspective, ignoring good news carried little risk. Ignoring danger could be fatal. The same bias fuels overthinking. When something feels uncertain, your brain starts generating possibilities. What if you fail? What if they reject you? What if you embarrass yourself? What if this decision ruins everything? Each new question is your brain's attempt to prepare for the future, believing that if it can predict every possible outcome, it can protect you from harm. The problem is that this strategy no longer works very well in today's world. Most modern challenges can't be solved by imagining every possible scenario. In fact, the opposite often happens. The more possibilities your brain creates, the more uncertain you feel, and the more your mind believes it needs to keep thinking. Before long, you've become trapped in a cycle where anxiety creates more thinking, and more thinking creates more anxiety. Understanding this changes the way you see your thoughts. Instead of treating every anxious thought as an important warning, you can begin to recognize it for what it often is, a prediction, not a fact. Your brain is offering possibilities, not certainties. That realization is incredibly powerful because it shifts your relationship with your thoughts. You don't have to believe every worst-case scenario your mind presents. You can acknowledge it, understand why it's there, and choose not to let it control your actions. Before we get into the practical strategies for breaking this cycle, if you're enjoying this video and finding it valuable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We explore the science behind everyday behaviors and psychological patterns, helping you better understand how your mind works so you can make smarter decisions and live with greater confidence. Now that you know why your brain overthinks in the first place, the next question becomes much more practical. How do you stop a survival system that's been running automatically for your entire life? That's exactly what we'll explore next. Now that you understand why your brain overthinks, here's the encouraging part. You don't have to fight your thoughts to break the cycle. In fact, trying to force yourself to stop thinking usually has the opposite effect. The more you try not to think about something, the more your brain keeps bringing it back. Instead of battling your mind, the goal is to change how you respond to it. One of the simplest techniques is to ask yourself a powerful question. Is there something I can do about this right now? If the answer is yes, stop thinking and take the smallest possible action. If you're worried about an email, write the first sentence. If you're anxious about an upcoming meeting, spend 10 minutes preparing. If you need to make a decision, gather the information you need and choose a direction. Action gives your brain evidence that the problem is being handled, which naturally reduces the urge to keep thinking about it. If the answer is no, then continuing to think won't create new information. Worrying about tomorrow's interview at midnight won't make tomorrow arrive any faster. Replaying yesterday's conversation won't change what was said. Recognizing the difference between a problem you can solve and one you can only imagine is one of the most effective ways to break the loop. Another strategy that many psychologists recommend is writing your thoughts down. When worries stay in your head, your brain treats them like unfinished business. It keeps bringing them back because it's afraid you'll forget something important. But once those thoughts are on paper or even in a notes app, your brain no longer has to carry the entire mental load. You've given those thoughts a place to exist outside your mind. Mindfulness is another tool that has been shown to reduce rumination. Despite what many people think, mindfulness isn't about emptying your mind or eliminating thoughts. It's about noticing when your attention has wandered and gently bringing it back to the present moment. Imagine you're washing the dishes, but your mind starts replaying an argument from 3 days ago. A mindful response isn't to get angry at yourself for thinking. It's simply to notice that your mind has wandered and return your attention to what you're doing. Every time you repeat this process, you're strengthening your ability to direct your attention instead of letting your thoughts direct you. It also helps to set limits on decision-making. Overthinkers often believe every choice deserves hours of analysis, even when the consequences are small. But not every decision needs to be perfect. Sometimes good enough really is good enough. Giving yourself a reasonable deadline to make a choice prevents your brain from endlessly searching for impossible certainty. Perhaps the most important shift is learning to become comfortable with uncertainty. Your brain wants guarantees, but life doesn't offer many. Waiting until every doubt disappears means you'll spend much of your life waiting. Progress comes from acting despite uncertainty, not eliminating it. Every time you choose action over endless analysis, you send your brain a powerful message. Uncertainty is uncomfortable, but it's not dangerous. Over time, that lesson becomes stronger than the habit of overthinking itself. And that's exactly how lasting change begins, not through one dramatic breakthrough, but through small, repeated choices that teach your brain a new way to respond. In the final part, we'll look at why those small choices have such a powerful effect and how they can literally reshape the way your brain works. One of the most remarkable discoveries in neuroscience is that your brain is constantly changing. It isn't fixed or permanently wired to overthink. Instead, it adapts to whatever you repeatedly do. This ability is known as neuroplasticity, and it's one of the biggest reasons there's hope for anyone who feels trapped in endless mental loops. Think of your brain as a network of paths through a forest. The more often you walk the same path, the clearer and easier it becomes to follow. The same thing happens with your thoughts. Every time you respond to uncertainty by overthinking, you're strengthening that mental pathway. Your brain begins to treat overthinking as the default response because it's the route it knows best. The good news is that the opposite is also true. Every time you catch yourself spiraling into what if thinking and redirect your attention towards something useful, you're creating a new pathway. At first, it feels difficult because it's unfamiliar. But with repetition, that healthier response becomes easier and more automatic. This is why lasting change rarely happens overnight. Many people expect to stop overthinking after learning a few techniques, only to become discouraged when anxious thoughts return. But the return of those thoughts doesn't mean you failed. It simply means your brain is still relying on habits it has practiced for years, or even decades. Success isn't measured by whether anxious thoughts appear. It's measured by how quickly you recognize them and how you choose to respond. Instead of getting pulled into another endless cycle, you pause, acknowledge the thought, and return your attention to something within your control. Each time you do that, you're teaching your brain a valuable lesson. Not every thought deserves your time or your energy. Over time, these small decisions begin to add up. You spend less time replaying conversations. You make decisions with greater confidence. You recover more quickly from setbacks because your mind no longer treats every uncertainty as a crisis. The situations around you may not change, but your relationship with them does. It's also worth remembering that overthinking isn't always the enemy. The same brain that imagines worst-case scenarios is capable of incredible creativity, careful planning, and deep reflection. The goal isn't to stop thinking. It's to make sure your thinking serves you instead of controlling you. When your thoughts lead to understanding, action, or growth, they're working for you. But when they keep you stuck in fear, self-doubt, or endless hesitation, it's time to step back and ask whether your mind is solving a problem or simply repeating one. The next time you catch yourself overanalyzing a conversation, worrying about a future that hasn't happened, or searching for perfect certainty before taking action, remember this: your brain is doing what it was trained to do. But because of neuroplasticity, you have the ability to train it differently. You don't need to win a battle against your mind. You simply need to practice responding to it in a better way, one thought and one choice at a time. And with enough repetition, what once felt like an endless cycle of overthinking can gradually become a habit of clarity, confidence, and purposeful action.